If you are listening during heavy rain, don't pause this story yet. People in Ashen Hollow believe storms can recognize voices, and once the weather learns yours, it keeps listening, especially after midnight. People outside Ashen Hollow always notice the silence first. Not the forests, not the fog, the silence. It arrived before storms, before disappearances, before someone in town woke up crying from dreams they could never fully remember. Hallway underground, wet concrete walls. The sound of tape reels turning somewhere far below the valley, and a woman calmly reading weather forecasts in the dark. The locals had rules for nights like that. Do not sleep near open windows during heavy rain. Do not whistle during fog season. Do not answer voices coming from storms. And the oldest rule of all, if the weather says your name, do not answer. Nobody explained why. Children simply learned not to ask. Ashen Hollow sat between mountain ridges in northern Oregon, hidden beneath pine forests, abandoned mining roads, and weather systems that behaved incorrectly. Rain arrived too early. Fog moved against the wind. Entire streets felt longer during storms. Visitors often complained that the valley felt wrong. Residents stopped using words like that years ago, because eventually everyone in Ashen Hollow understood the same terrifying thing. The valley was listening, and if you stayed long enough, sometimes it listened back. At 2:11 in the morning, the rain outside Daniel Mercer's apartment stopped moving. Not slowed, stopped. Every raindrop froze in the air at the exact same moment. The valley went silent. No thunder, no wind, no traffic below the highway. Just hundreds of motionless drops hanging outside Daniel's kitchen window, like glass suspended in darkness. Then something worse happened. The kitchen radio turned on by itself. Calm woman's voice filled the apartment. Soft, professional, almost comforting. Heavy fog approaching Ashen Hollow. Visibility near zero. Residents are advised to remain indoors. Daniel Mercer has approximately 53 minutes remaining. Daniel felt his stomach tighten, because nobody else was supposed to know he was home tonight. The voice continued calmly. Daniel is now standing beside the kitchen counter. Daniel is trying not to look outside. Daniel already recognizes the woman near the road. Slowly, Daniel looked toward the highway beneath his apartment. A woman stood alone beneath the frozen rain, gray coat, dark, wet hair, hands hanging motionless at her sides. Claire, his wife. Dead for 2 years, and the impossible part was, the rain touching her was still falling normally. Everywhere else in Ashen Hollow, time had stopped. Only around Claire did the storm continue moving. The radio crackled softly, then whispered, "If the rain outside your window has stopped too, do not say your name out loud." Daniel stepped backward, because the voice no longer sounded like a weather report. It sounded like a warning meant for whoever was listening. Then Claire slowly lifted her head toward the apartment window and smiled with unbearable sadness. Not wrong, not distorted, just heartbroken. Then every frozen raindrop outside suddenly fell at once. The sound hit, Ashen Hollow like applause, and somewhere far beneath the valley, something enormous, quietly inhaled. Daniel Mercer worked nights because grief felt smaller in darkness. During the day, Ashen Hollow pretended to be normal. At night, the town stopped. Pretending. Daniel hosted late-night weather broadcasts for KLMR, a tiny radio station above the valley hills. The building was older than the town itself. Nobody knew who built the original tower. Records before 1986 barely existed anymore. Town officials blamed flood damage, but Ashen Hollow had never flooded. That was another strange thing about the valley. Water, collected there. It rarely left. The station sat alone above town, surrounded by dead communication poles and rusted warning signs swallowed by weeds. Daniel usually worked alone. Tonight, the building felt occupied. The rain outside sounded uneven, like fingers tapping softly against glass. and every few minutes. The storm completely vanished for several seconds. Not quieter. Gone. The first silence lasted 3 seconds. The second lasted 9. During the third silence, the station telephone rang. Daniel answered immediately. Static. Then a woman whispered, "Don't read tonight's forecast." The line disconnected. Caller ID displayed one word, below. Daniel froze. Claire used that word once before she died. 3 nights before the accident, they drove through fog near Route 9 when Claire quietly asked, "Daniel, what's below this town?" At the time, he laughed nervously. Claire didn't. Now, 2 years later, her voice had just called the station. Outside the studio windows, fog rolled uphill unnaturally fast, moving against the wind. Like something beneath, the valley was breathing upward. At exactly 1:40 a.m., someone knocked on the station door. 3 slow knocks. Daniel opened it immediately. Nobody there, only rain, and a thick envelope lying on the wet concrete. Inside, tomorrow's weather forecast. A cassette tape. 1 photograph. A handwritten note. The photograph showed Ashen Hollow from above during a storm. Black clouds covered almost the entire valley, except one location, the hospital, perfectly untouched by weather. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "They keep the quiet people there." Daniel unfolded the forecast sheet. Normal temperatures, humidity, wind speeds, then the final section. Expected conditions, heavy fog, recognition events, emotional contamination, auditory overlap. Expected losses, Martha Vale, Eric Dunn, Daniel Mercer. Daniel stopped breathing. Then every speaker inside the station activated simultaneously. A calm female voice began reading the same forecast aloud, word for word. Daniel unplugged the nearest speaker. The voice continued. He shut down power to the studio. The voice continued. Then the station lights flickered violently. For 1 second, the dark studio windows reflected something impossible behind him. Not an empty station. A crowded room. Dozens of silent people standing motionless in darkness. Wet clothing. Still faces. Rainwater dripping onto the floor. The lights stabilized. The reflection vanished. Then the radio calmly whispered, "Daniel Mercer is alone for the last time." Outside, every raindrop resumed falling at once. Daniel played the cassette tape. The label read, "Archive Log, October 1986. An old broadcaster calmly read weather conditions for Ashen Hollow. Normal.professional. Then suddenly, he stopped speaking. 7 full seconds of silence. Then quietly whispered, "Forecast room B should have stayed sealed." Static swallowed the recording. But beneath the static, another voice barely existed. A soft female whisper. "Claire. The weather remembers people." Daniel nearly dropped the recorder. Claire never worked at the station. She should not know those terms: forecast room, B archive logs, recognition events. Unless she discovered something before her death. Daniel suddenly remembered Claire's final week alive. She stopped sleeping near windows, stopped listening to rain, stopped answering phone calls after storms, and one night, while watching fog crawl slowly across town, Claire whispered, "This valley feels lonely in a human way." At the time, Daniel thought anxiety was breaking her. Now he wasn't sure anymore. At 2:43 a.m., Martha Vale finally answered Daniel's calls. She sounded terrified. "Daniel," she whispered, "something's outside my house." "What?" "The fog." Thunder rolled through the valley. Martha continued quietly. "It stops moving when I look at it." Daniel grabbed his coat immediately. "I'm coming." Then Martha gasped sharply. "What?" Long silence. Then, "Daniel, why are you standing in my backyard?" Daniel froze. He was still inside the station. Martha's breathing became frantic. He's looking through the kitchen window. The line distorted violently. Then another calm voice interrupted. Martha Vale will stop responding in 12 seconds, Martha screamed. The call died instantly. At that exact moment, every weather monitor inside the station changed. Recognition. Event active. Daniel slowly looked outside. The rain had stopped touching the ground. Every drop hovered 6 inches above the pavement, like the valley itself was holding its breath. Daniel found the underground corridor beneath the station because water leaked upward through cracks in the floor. Not downward, upward. At the end of the corridor stood a rusted steel hatch. Painted across it, Forecast Room B. Underneath, written by hand, do not let it continue them. The hatch slowly opened by itself. Inside, old weather computers, tape reels spinning automatically, maps covered in handwritten circles, no dust, everything still running. At the center of the room stood a massive recording system connected to atmospheric monitors across Ashen Hollow. One monitor displayed weather conditions, another displayed something else entirely. Current conditions: rainfall, moderate, wind, northeast, pressure, falling. Human grief concentration, severe. Daniel stared at the last line, then another appeared beneath it. Memory retention storm forming, the real machine clicked alive. A woman's recorded voice calmly spoke. Experiment log, October 1986. The valley preserves emotional residue through atmospheric imprinting. Fear decays rapidly. Love remains longest during fog conditions. A second scientist asked, can the storms reconstruct behavior yet? Long silence, then, not behavior. Need stronger morning source. Daniel's blood went cold because he recognized the second voice, his own. The station above suddenly lost power. Emergency red lights flooded Forecast Room B, then Daniel heard wet footsteps in the corridor outside. Slow, careful, like someone trying not to frighten him. Claire's voice softly echoed through darkness. Daniel! He stopped breathing. The footsteps reached the doorway. Claire stood there, rainwater dripping from her grey coat. Not distorted, not uncanny, just exhausted. That made it worse. She looked exactly like someone who survived something terrible. Claire stared at him silently, then quietly asked, "Why did you leave me there?" Daniel nearly collapsed. "Claire." She stepped closer. "I waited in the fog for hours." Daniel shook violently. "The police said you died." Claire looked confused for a moment, then whispered, "I know what they said." Tears mixed with rain on her face. And suddenly, Daniel realized the horrifying truth. Whatever stood before him believed it was Claire. Claire touched one of the weather monitors. Immediately, the valley map illuminated. Hundreds of blinking lights appeared beneath Ashen Hollow. Residents, every person in town, represented by small pulsing dots. Some dim, some bright red. Claire pointed toward the brightest cluster. The hospital, then the church, then the school. Then finally, deep beneath the valley. A massive shape pulsing slowly under the earth, like a heartbeat below stone. Daniel whispered, "What is that?" Claire answered softly, "Accumulated grief." The room temperature dropped instantly. Frost spread across the monitors. Then words slowly formed in condensation. The valley cannot create, people only continue them. Daniel backed away. Claire looked terrified now, not of him, of the room, of the valley. "Daniel, it learns through mourning." Then every speaker activated simultaneously. A calm woman's voice filled Forecast Room B. New forecast, heavy fog. Severe emotional instability. Structural memory breach imminent. Expected event, Ashen Hollow remembers too much tonight. The underground walls began shaking violently, tape reels spinning faster, weather alarms screaming. Above them, the entire valley disappeared beneath white fog. Then Daniel heard something impossible, not thunder. Breathing. Massive breathing, as if thousands of sleeping people existed beneath the earth. Claire grabbed Daniel's hand, cold, shaking. If the valley finishes rebuilding me, it won't stop with me. The monitors suddenly displayed archived footage from around town, hospital patients staring silently at rain for hours, church visitors recording silence instead of prayers, school children drawing storms with human faces, residents freezing mid-conversation. Whenever fog appeared, Daniel finally understood. Ashen Hollow had adapted to this horror long ago. The rules, the radios, the silence during storms. The town was never trying to stop the valley, only survive living beside it. Then the final monitor activated, security footage from Route 9. Claire's car crash. Daniel watched in horror as Claire crawled from the wreck, alive, bleeding, disoriented. Then fog swallowed the road, and shapes slowly emerged from inside it. Hundreds of wet silhouettes moving silently toward her. Not monsters. People. The footage cut instantly. Claire whispered, "I never made it home." Forecast room. B flooded with warm fog from vents beneath the floor. Not natural fog. Breathing fog. The speakers screamed overlapping forecasts. Different futures, different timelines, different versions of Ashen Hollow collapsing. Claire held Daniel tightly. "I don't want to disappear again," Daniel cried openly now, because he finally understood the cruel design of the valley. It was not evil. It was lonely. Human grief kept feeding it emotional residue, and the more people mourned, the more complete the reconstructions became. The weather station never predicted storms. It measured mourning density, measured emotional residue, measured when the valley became strong enough to remember someone back into existence. Claire looked into Daniel's eyes. For one moment, she seemed completely real, painfully real. Then, the calm voice on the speakers whispered one final forecast. Final conditions, fog saturation complete, subject Claire Mercer stabilized. Identity divergence beginning. Claire's expression changed slightly. Tiny. Subtle. But wrong. Like a memory losing detail. She whispered weakly, "Daniel, I can't remember your face anymore." Daniel broke completely. Not because Claire became monstrous, because she was fading, like grief slowly losing precision. Claire touched his cheek gently, then softly asked, "Was I loved enough?" The valley shook violently, fog deepened around them, and Daniel realized the final horror. The valley did not feed on death, it fed on remembrance. At sunrise, forecast room B was empty. No Claire, no fog, no tapes. Only one cassette recorder remained, on the floor. Daniel pressed play. His own voice spoke calmly. Observation log. Ashen Hollow atmospheric retention system remains active. Weather reconstruction threshold exceeded. Daniel frowned. Then the recording continued. Proceeding to hospital ward C. Subjects there forget temperature first. Emotion loss follows shortly after. Long silence. Then his recorded voice whispered one final sentence. "The valley beneath the hospital is awake." The tape clicked off. Outside, Ashen Hollow looked normal again. Morning traffic, school buses, light rain. But now Daniel noticed something deeply wrong. Nobody in town carried umbrellas anymore, as if residents had stopped caring whether the weather touched them. Then the church bell rang once across the valley. Every person on the street stopped moving simultaneously, just for a second, listening. And somewhere far beneath Ashen Hollow, something enormous quietly breathed back. So if heavy rain ever becomes completely silent where you live, don't look outside immediately. Wait first, listen carefully, because people in Ashen Hollow believe the weather only stops for one reason. It's trying to recognize someone, and once the storm learns your voice, it never completely forgets you.